bias and racism and systemic and institutional trauma that's been pushed out, we got to deal with that every single day. And so that takes not only a pandemic, which is something, COVID and some of these other things, but then the repeated exposure to being traumatized on the news, on the radio,
all the time.
Exactly.
And someone had, if we go back to further education, it's almost like this stuff has been repeated from Marcus Garvey to Dr. Amos Wilson, right? When are we going to come to terms with that we're not in a place ever that we will always be considered equal, right? So those terms are out, right? So what are we fighting for? We're not fighting for separation. We're not fighting for equal because they're never going to look at us as equal.
Right.
So are we fighting for equity?
And I love, because again, the term equality was the first one that was pushed, but it's hard to be treated equal when we require more because you already been on a monopoly board for 400 years before.
Right. So equality's out.
Indeed.
So are we fighting for justice? Because justice then implies equal.
It does. It does. That's why the equity term, I love that. And I also, let's be real. When we look at it from a lens, it's so complex. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need 6 lenses because I need to be able to look at it from the front, both sides, the back, under the ground, and over top, so that we get a full view of, the exploitation, a full view of what the challenges and barriers are. Because you said it a minute ago, you're not going to get this. And it's not to say that there aren't good people.
Right.
It's the system.
It's the system.
Anytime that you try to change the system, power will always try to auto-correct itself.
I just had a woman who wrote a book, Maria Ferrantino. It's about reforming the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote a book really about how it's not fair, right? And it's not fair for the black man, right? Or the black African American. It's not equal, okay? So, and I asked her, why do you think, she goes, she talked about changing all these different things between the police, the bail, the court, the prison, and probation. And she says, really, she spoke. She says, white men are afraid of black America.
Mm-hmm.
So it can never change. That she literally said, she says white men are afraid of black America.
Wow.
So, because prison reform needs to come down from when we talk about the system, it all needs to crumble and rebuild again, right? So if white men are always going to be afraid of black men, and until they outwardly just say it, that they come from that fear.
Well, and so here's another. I'll take and I'll add something, because the reality is it's so much bigger than just the color piece. This is a piece it's the power and financial piece. So if I'm in power, I want to keep it about racism,
right?
So I can keep the racists fighting. So every one group may earn a little more, but it's only making me earn more. And it's keeping us in this space of competition. Just when you even look at the word racism, it implies a race.
Right.
So we gotta understand those things. And the power really is with us when we realize that all the power lies with us.
Oh, and it always has been. And we keep spinning it around thinking we're fighting against something, but we're really fighting ourselves.
Right.
That is the sickness. That is the trauma sickness that we face as a culture of people. And I think you know back in the '60s and '70s when we had it's funny because it was called Black Revolution, right?
Mhm.
But we've always been black, so how's it a revolution?
Right.
So it's almost like what were we realizing? So is black realization. Maybe that's what it should have been called. We don't want to call this a revolution. Maybe we should call this a realization. Because revolution sounds like we're going to war and it already makes people who are afraid more fearful.
Mhm.
And white people have always called it a race war. You know what I mean? And when they were in the Ku Klux Klan, they always called it this is going to be a race war. They use those terms. We've never used race war.
Right.
We would say if you're going to come for us, we'll be prepared. Even Malcolm X never said we're coming after you, but if you're going to come for us, we will be prepared.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
maybe we ought to just start teaching people that this is a you coming to light about who you are, a realization.
And that's the beauty in it, because what happened is through the advent of, let's say, 400 years, and I hate to even go forward, but we got to start somewhere,
Yeah,
so we can get back to truth, because the truth is we have many people who were way here, way before any transatlantic, so-called transatlantic slave trade. And so just the understanding of coming back into those things that are inherently in you and that are a part of our history that has that hasn't been told, right? That just further strengthens your own understanding of who you are, and that's the reclaiming of your power. Because see, we never lost it. We just chose
to give it away.
Exactly. And we had to choose to make a decision to take it back. And that taking it back means we had to have that social mastery and the social regulation and be able to operate from truth and not from our emotions.
Right. And whew, that is a bulldozer. If people just realize, you know what, I'm going to say this as we're live and we're recording and all that stuff. I want us as people, as cultural people, us of humanity people, to one share your emotions. If you're not right, say something. If you need help, ask. If you can help, offer. I mean, we have you know these suicides has taken a toll because it's not like it's something new. Military person, it's not like it's something new. Apparently we lose like 1,000 soldiers a day, right?
Mhm.
um because there's always somehow someone's going to take their life because of they don't feel like they belong anymore.
Mhm.
They don't feel like someone has them anymore. And can we say enough that someone's got you, but you got to say something?
Indeed, indeed. Hey, Doc, and you really hit on something. Like, one, if you haven't tapped in, you need to tap into Doc. I mean, just being an emotional reaction trainer is powerful, and I think what we've gotten away from, we so busy focused on degree certifications and titles that we forget that everything starts with emotion, right? And emotions is tied really to a brain thing. And then when you identify and reduce whatever triggers you have, and when you tune into your own physical symptoms, when you consider that your story is powerful behind our measure, but then also that you make insert assumptions and interpretations based on your previous experience. And sometimes we had to rewrite those experiences because we were looking at it from a child or adolescence lens. We have to now look at it from an adult lens and be able to leverage that so that we grow into our true selves, and reinforce that by, instead of the negative self-talk that we typically do, we have to fill it with positive self-talk. right?
But how about first, if you're negative self-talking, ask yourself, not I should stop. Okay, let's find out how come. Where did
Yeah,
this
exactly.
come from? Like, what am I saying that is so negative, and can I overcome it? And where did this buildup come from? It may not ever come from you. Someone taught you to be negative about yourself.
Well, and that's where I was getting at when I said consider the story that you're telling yourself
Right,
and where did
right,
it come from? Because I got a father who I was talking with, and he was like, he's horrible. He plays the guitar. He's brilliant, but he's a little overweight. And sat down and I just asked the questions. He's like, nobody loved me. I said, well, let's look at your victories. He put all the things he done really, really well. I said, now tell me where you failed at in your life. And I said, by the way, failure is not bad because it's just an indicator or barometer to help you shift left or shift right or go over something. But he could only tell me two things. But he, on a piece of paper, he wrote down 30 things where people told him he did positive things. So, like I told him, you're stuck in that one thing that really kind of, and I said, you need to write a letter or you need to have a conversation with your mom. But the truth is, it was because he was heavy. And as a parent, you worried about your child because it could have health complications.
right, right.
I said, did you ever think of it from that way? I said, probably not. But that was you as an adolescent responding in an adolescent way. And that makes perfect sense. There's nothing wrong with that. But I need the 35-year-old you to tell the 13-year-old you
Yeah.
that you're okay and that wasn't mom's intentions, so we can move beyond that developmental stage.
And when I do regressive therapy, when you go back to get that wounded part of yourself and you join it in with the love that you have, that you can have for yourself, you become you awaken a mind spectrum, like it's like you smelling new smells from now on, like you hear, you see new light from now on. And yeah, there's a lot of struggles going on, from neighborhoods to economics to religion to stuff that was just piled on top of you, that someone pointed out maybe in school, saying, you're not that smart, or those schools, that education, those people that had, quote, authority figures that we gave ourselves to. We gave them, you know what I mean? Like, you live in a bad neighborhood. I didn't know I lived in a bad neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like, where did that term come? I mean, I didn't make it up, right? Someone says, oh, you live over there. So again, someone gave you the information about even your own neighborhood, right?
Yeah,
That's scary. Like, oh, so you live in the ghetto. Who called it a ghetto? They called it a ghetto, right? So now I grow around saying, man, I live in the ghetto. I live in the ghetto. You didn't come up with that term. Someone gave you that term. It's
exactly.
scary. It's scary.
It's funny, Doc. So imagine going into a school and saying, I need 30 to 50 of your best and brightest students. Oh, you need the ones with the 4.5. No, I need the ones who you feel like you don't have no control over. They brilliant. They just bored because you don't know how to tap into their greatness.
That's right.
So give me them best and brightest. And that term, and it just really irritates me. At risk.
Yeah.
So I flip it though. When they say, yeah, those at risk, I say, at risk means they can be at risk for greatness. They can be at risk for a PhD. They can be at risk for anything that you're saying on the left side of the spectrum. They can be it on the right side of the spectrum. But as a teacher or as somebody who's supposed to be a leader, for you to be saying that and discount them in their voice, that means you need to look at yourself, because you're projecting your limiting beliefs back to your.
Does someone project purposely? And I think that's why when we talk about equity and inclusion, basically when we're talking to white people, we have to ask you to really get over your whiteness, to say, am I speaking from what? like what is the lens I'm speaking from? And there's a lot of work that white people have to do also, just as much
Right,
as I think they're just as traumatized as blacks are trying. It's just different. It's just different.
right. Because to your point, if I had privilege, sometimes I don't even see my privilege
Right.
because that's normal for me. I never had to think about this. All these things really shifts the balance of scale in terms of even if let's say for instance I'm from a lower economic status and I'm white or European, I'm still afforded a certain privilege just because of how I look. And you know, some people come into it very differently and never experience. Most of the time, that's when they move to a different part of the country or
Right.
something, and they say, "Whoa, people look at me like this," because they don't know me here, but they do see my color, and that's what they're fixated on, and that's what adds the credibility for them in those instances.
Look at LeBron. LeBron comes from privilege. He's an athletic, privileged person. I mean, is it something he works on? Obviously, yes. But when he was a young boy, we take it when he was just a young boy, he was athletically privileged. So
Yep.
people looked at him different because he was privileged. Did he know he was like when you come from no matter what you're good at, you could be privileged at what you come from or what you're able to do. It's like being a sergeant in the military, right? That's sort of some privilege. You know why? Because I'm not a PFC, I'm not a private. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I got some
Exactly.
privilege.
And look, and let's be real. You and I, as black men, we're privileged because the most marginalized population of people on the planet Earth is the black woman.
Right,
So, and actually, many occasions we may have privilege over white women sometimes.
right. We got a chance to vote before they did. So we have to look at what type of privilege we're talking about, what kind of spectrum. That's why you said six lenses, and I don't think everyone looks at everything from a six lens view. They're so mono, right?
Mhm.
With mono lens that is like it's just one way, the way is way. No, it's not that. I hope I hope you're not living like that. I hope people are if you're listening, I hope you're not living like, man, this is the way. Wow. That's that's like creator talk. Like you are the creator of all things talk. Like to have that power to go talking about, man, this is the way. It's absolutely absurd to me. And with this mental health issues that we have, I talked to young old girl when her friend, I didn't know they were friends.
Yeah, yeah. She, like I said, she's in leadership Charlotte with all of us.
Yeah, I did not know. I mean, I reached out to her and she says, "Hey, doc, I'm really feeling bad." I said, "What?" She goes, "My girl just killed herself." And I said, "Who?" She goes, uh, the reigning Miss America." And I said, "That was your friend." I said, and then the whole conversation changed about. I think everyone should go through grief therapy. Get all you because the grieving is something that we were never taught. People were never taught how to grieve. I wrote this article that Black strength is really grieving because when it's coming from slavery, when you were beaten, when your child was taken from you, when your wife was taken from you, when your husband was taken from you, when your leg was taken from you, they told you you can't whine and cry about this. You got to move on, march on, and still work. So grieving was beaten out of us. Grieving was actually taken from us. And that's why I think we looked at it by using words like you can't cry if you're a man or you don't be
Right.
weak or I think that's slave talk. I think that is total slavery talk because if someone ripped your child away from your arms right now, I hope you would be sad. That's an emotion that's good, right? You're sad. Your child just got ripped out of your arms. That's a sad fact.
It's so funny that you just said it. So I was just on a call with about 20 fathers.
Mm,
And so what we talked about was all black fathers this time. And what we talked about was anger and suppressing your emotions. And so we was talking about us. We started out with like suicide and different things. And I said, look, two of the most challenging things that we face is anger, but anger is a trump all emotion. You know, anger is tied to really, you can break down disappointment, you can talk about fear, but that it really start with love, because if you never loved whoever or that situation, you wouldn't be angered. But what happens is what we've been internalized or socialized to believe was just be resilient. And we always lift the word resilience up. But you know, my quotable is resilience without recharge is death while living.
Wow.
I can be resilient and I'm keep going and keep absorbing blows. Right. But at what point do I get a blood clot and I never stop to get checked or to re-energize and heal so that I can go back to it stronger and heal? I'm just gonna keep going. That's survival.
Yeah.
And we have to be looking at thriving. We have to take the healing. And I don't really mess with soda, but I grabbed a soda bottle for this example and I shook it up and I said, is it open? No, don't open it. Why shouldn't I open it?
Right.
Because this is all the suppressed anger. It's the same thing that happened with us. When we allow ourselves to just keep going, I'm not gonna say nothing. They hurt my feelings, but I'm not gonna say nothing.
I'm not gonna be a punk. I'm not gonna be weak to them. I'm gonna show my bravado. I'm gonna show my puffiness, you know. And I tell you, I don't even know where did that come from? Where did that come from?
But I think you were spot on earlier. I think it comes from the plantation, because when we were there, you know, even the mothers, they needed to make sure that the young males, because you know, you had the young bulls and sometimes they wanted to try things, but if they did it, they would be lost and then it could impact other people.
Right.
And yet we still, I mean, I don't know how many times I see somebody talking about their child of another ethnicity and the Black person just downplay how well their child is doing, and they're doing just as good.
Right.
And so was Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome and how it's genetically passed down.
Yeah.
But if trauma can be passed down genetically and through our DNA, then so can healing if we model it.
Correct. And and the only way we can model that is to realize that we are sick again. And we have to say something. We have to say, I don't feel so well. And I think people, when they ask, I don't know, I say this all the time. People say, hey, Doc, can I ask you a stupid question? And I'm just like, okay, hold on, stop. Before you even ask me whatever question you want to ask me, where did you feel that when you said it? Can I ask you a stupid question? Like, why did that come first before whatever you were going to say? Like, where do you think he goes? Well, I don't know. I said, you do know. There's something about that you don't want to feel a certain way. That's not good, because whatever question you have for me, I can't even give you an answer because it has to be filtered through what you feel about yourself. And so my answer gets lost in your trauma. So even if I speak to you in truth and healing, it goes through trauma and it gets blown up. So you don't even feel my love when I speak to you, because you already come out with your defense of this is stupid and maybe I don't know and maybe I should know and I feel weak even asking this. Wow. I mean, so let's erase that and then let's get to your question first. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense, because again, it's almost like when somebody say, oh, I think you are an excellent facilitator. Your background is great. We really need you to work with these kids. But so now I just discounted everything I just said to you.
Right.
Not most, but a lot of people always talk and then throw that but in there. I'm like, you do know you just invalidated everything you about to say.
Everything.
Because of that but.
Right. And I don't know if people understood that's what the but was for. Because they read a but as another, like, if you're reading it, it reads often like, I was going to the store, but before I went there, I stopped off at a friend's house, like it was an
Mhm.
additional two.
Right,
But
right.
but in speaking, it's not. It negates everything.
Exactly. It's that instead of the and, like you said, it's an or.
It's an or, right? It's an or. How often do you meet with your men?
Um, every 2 weeks.
And how are they doing?
They do, look, so the folk thought that we would fall off as a result of course the pandemic. However, because we start with gratitude, affirmations, and meditation, they're in a completely different place. So they on there, I got them on there meditating with their kids.
Mm.
And so it's essentially a healing circle. And then we lay the fatherhood classes inside of it. But, leveraging and starting off with the three powerful things to helping them feel comfortable. Like these guys will graduate and they always come back because they know they're going to receive love. And I started off with this is a place where you can take your armor off. I make sure I'm transparent. Like, look, I tell them, look, we're all human, so it don't matter what space you're in. I deal with post-traumatic stress syndrome. I deal with struggle with depression and anxiety. Like I'm transparent and upfront. Clinically, I know it, but it don't matter when you're in the weeds.
Right.
You can't see the forest.
Right. I mean, I just this morning. I mean, it was last night. I've been missing my children. I haven't seen my children. So me not seeing my children, and I talk to them, I'll text them or whatever. But I've been missing the touch of my children, the holding of my children, and that depressed me, and I felt sad. And so my wife asked me, she goes, "Well, how are you today?" I said, "I'm sad." She goes, "Well, what's going on?" I said, "Well, I've been missing the kids. I really want to be around my kids. I want to hug them, hold them, and touch them. And I'll send a text or a FaceTime, and that's good. But I've been missing the energy of being around my tribe. You know what I mean? As much as I love doing, man, I want to see you in April. I'm so excited about the possibility of hugging you in April that it's like I got that, but I need to be around people that has that energy. That's life to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm okay with saying I'm not doing so well today. Let me just quiet myself and let me hear my thoughts. So there was a day this past week I went out in the woods with my dog, and me and my dog, we don't even talk in the woods because we all do by hand signals. We're training by hand signals, but just quieting and sitting and hearing my thoughts going, I'm sad or I'm upset, whatever those words are coming, and they're just slowly coming down, and I'm piecing them out and I'm breathing them out. I'm going, I am sad, and this is the why, and this is how I can fix. So I'm going through the process, and then I feel better about the process. It doesn't mean it's over, it just means I went through the process.
Right. And again, like it's funny. So I was in a conversation, and the conversation came up about, I'm not healed yet. And so I said, let them go through it. I said, now, what I need you to understand that you're never actually healed.
Right.
You are always healing on a destination
Yes.
to being healed, but life will hit you where there's ebbs and flows, and something else will come up. And so we can't search for just a happy place, because when something feels good doesn't mean it's good for you.
That's right.
So you have to just understand that healing is a process that you never really truly arrive at, but you always get better, and then something else happens, and we just are better prepared to deal with it. And it may not be as stringent, but no one can be completely healed, because that goes back to perfection.
Right. One of the things when we get into things that has happened, good, bad, whatever, it triggers a pleasure center part of the brain. And most people say, well, I didn't have any pleasure when this has happened. The pleasure center part of the brain isn't always talking about good pleasure. It just talks about pleasure, how it kicks off these endorphins. That's all it does. And that signaling, that's why people who are in an abusive situation stay in an abusive situation because it creates this euphoric feeling of familiarity, and their body starts to want it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
drugs are bad. It hurts your body, but it creates this euphoric feeling in your brain. If your
Mm-hmm.
body was to respond, it would be like, stop.
Yeah, now you spot on that. And that's the thing. When we learn to activate those bliss chemicals that you're talking about, for some it's running. Them endorphins kick in and they kick in at the craziest time because you might be at mile 15.
Yeah, ready to pass it, right.
And so the better we understand our body, and that's why I always go back to self-mastery, right? When you understand how to activate these things and these hormones, it's the same thing as freaking tripping. Some of them who trip on acid and other things. Yep. Your body can do it naturally for you.
Those DHTs, man.
Yes, sir.
With kids who are getting kicked out of school, sent home from school, I wish we could reach all those parents. I really want them to contact us because we can homeschool them right from here. You don't need to go back to that school that doesn't want you, that feels like you have no value anymore. We can get those kids now and teach them their value of how we say they're at risk. They're at risk of being this. They're at risk. They're at risk of having greatness. They're at risk of being a genius. They're at risk of being all of it. And let us have our kids, since you're throwing them out, kicking them out, and they're walking the halls, they're causing all this disturbance. There's something they're missing and something you're not able to give them. I know we could give them that.
Well, and the truth is, to your point, Doc, I mean, look, I'll use you for an example. Your understanding of the brain, the body, not even getting into the martial arts, because see, it's those things, the martial arts would be a caveat for them just to be interested. Once they know your background, they're like, oh, whoa, let me ask you this. So now you got their mind intrigued. Right. That's the space you want them in. And then when you start to talk about their history and their culture and the impact that their ancestors have had prior to 400 years.
Right.
I didn't know this. We talked the Great Wall of China. Well, let me tell you about the Great Wall of Zimbabwe and the Great Wall of Benin that supersedes the Great Wall of China.
Right.
Let's talk about like all those beautiful mansions and stuff that you see maybe in Spain and Portugal, and the huts that you only think are in Africa, but in reality, it was the Moors who actually designed, and they built them based on what they have over there. And that's how the Ethiopians kept those who wanted to infiltrate their kingdom out, was those same type of structures. So understanding that, like, it gives you a different lens and perspective. You're like, whoa, now I'm walking with my chest puffed out, my shoulders back, pulling my pants up. Now I can get to the learning. Let me tell you about mathematics and where mathematics originated.
Wow. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Let me tell you where both yoga and meditation originated at. Yeah, India. No, let's dig a little deeper. Let me take you to the Meta-Nucha and Luxor, or El Kebulan or Kemet, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But those are the things, like you said, because now I got them and it's more individualized. And so the one thing they knew, they were saying, oh, well, black kids had ADHD and ADD, they can't sit still. And then the science came out, I guess that's about maybe 12 or 15 years ago, that you shouldn't be sitting in the chair like we did when we was in school all day. They made it where it's more flexible, so that spine movement. So I was telling them, I said, look, you can't believe what's always projected on you. And it's amazing how somebody can tell you you're low functioning and you believe it. In reality, you're a genius. And I've had kids that they tested them with an instrument and didn't know how to read the instrument, diagnosed them wrong. Later found out, a couple years later, those kids was geniuses. So they was just uninterested. And so they was getting bored. Black, white, Latino, Asian. It just wasn't where the class was at, they was far beyond that. So they was out in La La Land.
So, you know, and when we talk about education, and we got to realize that education with all these systems, it's a box, right? Those chairs, man, you made me hurt with those chairs because we had the desk with the wooden arm. I mean, there was no flex. It had you slide in your desk, and it had the table right here. That was it. It was going nowhere, right? And if you were in elementary school, you had your little flip top thing was right here. That was it. Once you got in here, now they got chairs, people sliding in and out, and so yeah. Those were prison cells back then. Those schools, those wooden desks. Man.
Well, it's funny you say that because even when you think stimuli and response, school period, first grade, bing, the bell ring, walk to class, it's going in a line. If you really pay attention to some of it, it's a reason why we say the school to prison pipeline is conditioning you to respond to a bell, looking at authority. And to your point, I tell people all the time, I ask kids, I say, so you want to think outside the box, right? Oh, yeah. That's creative? Yes. I said, how about I tell you that's not creative? So what do you mean?
Yeah.
If you thinking outside the box, that means you're already in the box. And if you're in the box, you can't see what's outside of it. If we knock down the walls, we get this back to war tactics, right? Once I see the whole battlefield, I have 4, 6 observations of what's in front of me, on the side of me, behind me, above me, and I can look down. So I see the whole playing field. So the thinking outside the box, I tell them it might be a little bit of a difference than just thinking traditionally, but still, I can't see outside of it. So I got to remember what's out there. And so my creativity is stifled. And then I get an example of a grasshopper that used to jump this high. And when you put him in a mason jar and poke holes in it, and he can only jump this high, when you take it up, he still will only jump this high.
It's so true. You've trained him that he's killed his own personal greatness.
Yes, classical conditioning.
We've been putting mason jars for a long time. It's gotten holes poked in on it, and we realized that there's a ceiling to it. There's no ceiling. Who taught you that bullshit? Who taught you there was a ceiling? Stop it. Right? Like, you know, when I get to the top and when I make it and when I become successful, those words were given to you. They were described what your success supposed to look like. And you didn't describe it. It was described for you. And if it was described for you, as you break down the word describe, that means it was scripted.
Yes.
Right? Because scribe means to write. And to describe means it was conscribed for you. That means it was written for you. You didn't write none of this.
And look, now you get fancy on me because I love to tell people, I say, let's go back to the etymology of the word. Because even when they say, like, I understand, I said, think about that. Do that really even make any sense? If anything is under something, then are you really capturing what's being said? You know, and I tell people words are powerful. We have to learn to rip. Well, that's a whole nother thing, because even education, to some degree, is digest and regurgitate, and it's not me actually learning the information. It's just I'm able to keep it in my mind to take a test, but I can't apply it, so it's not learned.
It's not learned, right? Because like trades are learned. Like for me to build something, to make something, that is a learn because I can apply it, I can do it, right? If I was taught how to build it and unable to build it, I didn't learn anything.
Exactly.
Man.
And you know, it's funny because, and this is no offense to professors.
No.
But if you're a professor at a university for 25 years and you never worked in the trade, in theory, you understand the concept.
Yeah, it's a concept.
Let me tell you, go to that factory and you're going to tell them it should take exactly 3 minutes for this process to go through. And then I go and sit and have a conversation with the person who's been running that machine for 25 years. And they're going to tell you after about 2 minutes, you're gonna have to do this, otherwise the whole machine gonna shut down. So then you got to bridge the two because their theory has not been
applied,
tried, and tested to see if it actually worked in that type of environment.
We know our brothers. We wish them well. We'll pray for them. We know they're busy. We know they're doing the work. Real Coffee, Black Coffee Conversation is every month. We get our men together, and it is not because they're not here, they're not with us. We know that to be true because they love us, we love them, we want them safe. I do want to mention this every month we come on that voting, it needs to happen. You need to register for your vote. I know in Maryland, in North Carolina, is it open registration? Like, do you have to register?
Yeah, you have to register. You have to register
to have your vote count, right?
Yeah.
Because in Maryland, like some states, you don't have to register as a this or that for you to vote. You could just vote.
So if you're talking about registering as a Democrat or a Republican,
right?
Because you got unaffiliated too here.
Okay, yeah. In Maryland, you have to register one or the other.
Wow.
I know. For your vote to be counted.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. I know one of the things we struggle with here, which many people across the United States struggle with, is the gerrymandering, right?
They did it again this year. They tore up all kinds of maps this year.
Wow.
Adding people, adding more population here, creating more over here. Yeah. I do still want you to understand where you live, how you live, where the state, county you live in, understand your voting rights, understanding that do you have to register as an affiliate, or can you just go vote for a certain candidate? Make sure you vote for your judges. Make sure you vote for your people, because it's important. It's important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's one of the things that we don't talk enough about. It's important that we understand the power of really even hiring lobbyists to advocate on laws that's going to operate on behalf of the people, and not just going with what they put before you. Create your own changes that you need to make. Hold those folk who are in power accountable, because it's not them who have the power, it's the people who have the power, because you're the ones who vote them in. And if they know that you won't vote them back in, then they will operate in what your demands are. So we have to do a better job of making sure we bring all the people to the table and introduce those laws that we need to
and happen. Vote for policy, not people.
That's right.
You gotta be careful. Right. If you vote on a person the way they look and what you think they're supposed to have, because we have a lot of people that are black. They're not healthy. They're not a healthy. They're in the wrong way. They're not looking out for. I believe. What is his name? The Supreme Court Justice. Clarence Thomas. I think he was set up with his wife. I think it's almost like a Russian spy movie. Like, because he went to the school he went to, he was friends with the friends he went to, and I think he hung around with people, and they set him up with this woman to keep him always on track. And it has nothing to do with mixed marriages. It has nothing to do with it. But I think he is set up to be the token Negro for certain whites.
You might be right, Doc.
I mean, yeah, I just think there's something off about that, right? I mean, as bright, as intelligent he didn't meet his wife until after graduation in 1981 or 82, something like that. It just seems like most people who are talented like that meet their mates in college. He didn't meet her in college, right? He met her through a friend.
That's and again, here's another one. When I listen to him talk and his perspectives, it was always on my mind. Was it him, or is that something that he's been fed,
Right,
and he's bought into or assimilated into, or was he trying to fit in with a
certain
certain
group.
population of people or group? Yes.
I was told this yesterday. You know this Bill Belichick thing, and with Brian Flores, right?
Yep.
He's suing NFL. Someone had said that Bill Belichick wanted Brian Flores to sue the NFL. Bill Belichick, who is a genius in the football field,
Yep.
very meticulous, made a mistake of who he was texting. He knew exactly who he was texting, so Brian Flores would know exactly what was going on, so he would break this open. I was told that yesterday. I was like, I never thought of it that way.
Yep. I can see. Yeah, I can see it. Definitely being a possibility. Because the same way he could have, so the way it was framed to me, and again, I won't even see frame. This was somebody's perception that he was trying to send it to the other Brian who actually get the job.
Right, but he said it to Brian Flores. So you think he really made that mistake, or he wanted Brian Flores to know that they are not really hiring you? So he kind of like gave him a what's up without knowing he gave him a what's up.
Right. One of those subliminal messages.
Yeah.
But to your point, it would make sense to me, because if I don't really deal with Flores like that, he wouldn't have been the first person that came up in your text. It's normally who you text and you communicate with.
Right. So maybe it was done on purpose. Good job, Bill. He wanted the NFL to be sued. Because now look at what's his name, who's trying to buy the Denver Broncos.
Oh, who's that?
The guy who has that cable.
Oh, I forget his name. I know you're talking about.
The light-skinned brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he put in a bid for like $4 billion.
Wow.
What is his name? He's got the nose.
No, I know exactly who you're talking about. I just can't think of his name.
Because he was suing cable too, right? For wrongful.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, my brother. I will see you next month. I always got you on a call anyway. Love you dearly.
Byron, love you too, Doc.
Byron. What Byron? What was it?
Can't think of the last name.
Byron something.
Yep.
All right, my brother. Be good, be safe, be kind, be compassionate, all you guys. And if you guys have any questions or comments, you can always email us or text us. Thanks, Kelly. I love you, brother. You guys be good,
love
be
you
safe.
too, Doc.